In his Fukan Tzengi, the universal recommendation for the practice of Zazen, Master Dogen has this to say about Zazen. He says, it is not learning meditation, it's simply the dharma gate of ease and joy. The dharma gate of ease and joy. Now, Dogen's a famously difficult writer, and this seems quite a straightforward passage. But although it's a straightforward passage, it's difficult for us to get. So, at a pinch, I think we can understand that Zazen concerns itself with ease, in the sense that we're putting aside our ideas, our conditioning. If we think in terms of the virtues, then we're probably thinking in terms of equanimity, compassion at a push. But joy, that seems much more problematic. Do we not tend to think that Zazen isn't joyful? It's difficult, it's physically challenging, it's psychologically very challenging, and surely the point of it is to endure and go towards some state that we might term enlightenment. And I think that would be people's general understanding of what Zazen is, and indeed what meditation is. But Dogen doesn't say that at some point in the future Zazen will be joyful. He says that joy is one of its principal characteristics, along with ease. And I think to have any chance of understanding what he's talking about, we have to go back to basics. And the basics in our case mean the basics of the posture. It's one of the peculiarities of Buddhism that the central feature of it is this very physical practice of meditation. But yet, we're not given huge amounts of instructions about how we're supposed to sit. So, for example, when I was first introduced to Zazen, I was told two things, really. I mean, the first is that if you're sitting in some variant of the cross-legged position, then your knees need to be on the ground. And that's eminently practical, because if your knees are off the ground, propped up by a cushion, your back's going to bow out and you're going to be uncomfortable. And the second instruction, which is more ubiquitous, I think, was an instruction that we should push up with the top of the head and tuck the chin in, something like that. And that was it. The instruction about the knees obviously makes sense. The instruction about pushing up with the top of the head is a terrible instruction. And it's terrible because it's introducing tension, more tension, into the head and neck. And it's directing our attention to the wrong place. It's rather like trying to improve the decor of the attic whilst the basement is collapsing from dry rot. So the foundation of our practice requires us to start rather lower down. So what I say to my students repetitively, but it doesn't bear too much repetition, is that the absolute foundation of sitting is the correct position of your pelvis. That's absolutely essential. And specifically, you require to tilt your pelvis forward in such a way that your bum is sticking out a bit. So there's a curve in your lower spine, and your weight is going down directly through your sit bones, and specifically the middle and front sections of your sit bones. And if you have that as your foundation, then everything above that stands a chance of being right. So if your pelvis is in the right position, you're not having to make an effort to keep your trunk straight. Your trunk is naturally straight, and you could sit upright for an indefinite period of time. And likewise, because your pelvis is in the right position, your head can be in the right position as well. It can be nice and balanced and not heavy on the trunk. And that produces tremendous benefits. Primarily, if we're following some idiotic instruction like pushing up our head and our pelvis is out of position, then we're going to be uncomfortable, and our attention is going to be disproportionately fixed on our head, which means even more disproportionately on our thoughts, on our minds, and we'll start to think that the purpose of Zazen is to empty the mind, so to get rid of these ridiculous, repetitive excuses for thoughts, or even better, to replace those thoughts with something unspecifically magnificent. So, if the body is in the right position, then our attention isn't so much on our head and trying to do something with our head and our neck. Our attention is much more on our torso. So if we're sitting in the right position, the musculature of our body is right. So there's these nice postural muscles are all doing their proper job, and our breathing is naturally in our lower belly and our pelvis. Primarily, it's not fixed, but it's primarily there. And here's the point. If our body is balanced, then we're released from the tyranny of the mind. If our body is balanced, then our awareness can be embodied. And if our awareness is embodied, then we have a lot more attention that we can give to our pelvis, to our belly, to our torso, to our throat. And the effect of all of that is that the stretching that we're trying to do with our will, if we're trying to push up at the top of our head, seems to me to effortlessly occur. So there is a sense of expansion and elongation in the torso, but it's not one that's willed. It's not one that we're doing with our muscles. It's something that happens naturally. So we're experiencing the body, the whole body, when we're sitting, not as some vehicle of the mind, but as something pleasurably and dynamically alive, hence joy.